absolute goodness if you ask me.
Alright, today I am going to be making steak and egg breakfast. Absolute goodness. Alright, the first thing you're going to need is steak. You're going to need eggs. Let's get started. So I have my pan heating up over here to the left. I'm going to go ahead and put the steak. I had this steak marinated overnight for absolute goodness purposes. I had it marinating in seasoning, herbs and spices. Alright, and I'm going to go ahead and start cooking this while I prepare the eggs. Absolute goodness. Let's come over here. I'm going to go ahead and put this steak in the pan really quick. You see that's the pan right here. It's been heating up for about a couple of minutes. I'm just going to slide the steak, tootsie slide, inside of the pan right there and just let that steak start to cook. Absolute goodness if you ask me. Now, meanwhile, while that steak is cooking and sizzlerating, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to prepare my eggs. Alright, I have eggs right here. I'm going to have 3 eggs, and I'm going to add something special in that. A little bit of green onion. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and add some green onion to the mix really quick. Just go ahead and add some green onion to it. Then I'm going to crack open my eggs. That's 1. 2, and then trace eggs. Alright, I'm just going to go ahead and add the rest of the green onions to it. Don't want to make anything, put anything to waste. So I'm going to grab the onion, the rest of the green onion, and then I'm going to mixerate them in my bowl right here. Mixerate the eggs pretty well. Some people like to add salt or pepper. I'm just going to add a little bit of all-American pepper. Absolute goodness. Add a little bit of pepper to it. Then I am going to mixerate them a little bit, and this will get the flavoration going around pretty well. Absolute goodness. Alright, so now we have that mixed. We're just going to let that sit a little bit. And then I'm going to get started. Get back over here to the steak, which is smelling great. Absolute goodness. Look at the steak in there. It's cooking quite nicely. Alright, so I'm going to check up on this to see how well it's fritating. Alright, check up on this steak. See how well it's fritating on this. Nice. So what I'm going to do now, this is going to be a butter steak. I don't know if you know, but cooking with butter on a steak is absolute goodness. It browns it quite nicely. So I'm going to take a piece of that butter, and I'm going to go ahead and flip this steak right here. Turn it up a little bit. Turn up. Alright, so I have the steak in there cooking nicely. Look at it. Browning, seared almost to perfection on this side. This steak is going to be medium well. A little bit more than medium. Absolute goodness. So I'm just going to turn this up and let the butter's going to allow a nice crispation onto the steak. If you ever cook with butter, you know what butter can do to a steak. Absolute goodness. It browns it quite nicely. Butter has a browning effect. You see how this came brown right here without butter. I'm going to show you what it looks like on the other side. On the other side with butter browning it. Alright, it's slightly toast-rating right there. Just going to let that finish toast-rating right there. And then I'm going to add another piece of butter on top. And this is going to melterate and add seasonation to the steak. Absolute goodness if you ask me. I'm going to go ahead and move this around. Get it to more hot spots of the pan, which will add for brownation. Now, with the steak in here cooking like this, it's adding flavoration to the pan, and the flavoration from the pan will be absorbed by the eggs with green onion. Adds a nice flavoration to it. Absolute goodness. Alright, so I'm going to keep on checking this browning on there. Make sure it's browning nice. You see some of the garlic in your toasterating. Don't want that to burn, so I'm going to take some of the garlic and put the garlic on top, like that. Absolute goodness. Have the garlic on top. And I'm just going to move the steak around to get some of this brownation from the butter onto the steak, which will add a lot to the flavoration. Absolute goodness. Got this butter on here browning. Don't want to overcook the steak, so it's imperative that you stay conscious of the steak cooking. Alright, so we have this in here. Zoom out a little bit. Zoom in a little bit more so you can see some of this. Look at that. Look at that steak. Absolute goodness, if you ask me. Absolute goodness. Alright, so I'm about to flip this one more time, and I'm going to allow this butter right here to melt the ring and toast this side of the steak, as well as finish cooking the steak to the degree that I want it to be cooked. Absolute goodness. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this and let you see the toasteration. Look at the toasteration of the steak right here. Look at it. Perfection. Alright. Can't get it better if you go to a steakhouse. Absolute goodness, if you ask me. Alright, so I'm just going to let this cook for a little bit right here. You see the butter start to melt right. Starting to burn a little bit over here. Just scoop that up. Scoop the burnation up. Let this finish frying right here. Alright, so I'm going to let this cook for about another 30 to 33 seconds. And then I'm going to start with the eggs. And it's going to add a lot of flavoration from the steak into the eggs. It's going to permeate the eggs, giving it a nice flavoration. Absolute goodness. Alright, so the steak's about done. I'm going to let it fry just a little bit, let it toast on that side a little bit more. See how I'm taking the steak and moving it all around in the pan, making sure all the flavoration gets into the steak. Get some of these pieces of garlic, make sure they don't brown or burn too much. Absolute goodness. I'm going to go ahead and take this, put that on top. Absolute goodness, if you ask me. Absolute goodness. So that's frying. I'm getting my plate ready because the steak should be about done right now. Press down on it to make sure. Check up on it here. Oh wow, look at that toastation right here. Absolute goodness. Toasting to perfection. Perfection. Speaking a little bit of French for you all out there. Just going to go ahead and just do this right here. And then I'm going to go ahead and put it onto my plate. Let me zoom out a little bit. I'm going to take my plate, put the steak right there, and immediately I'm going to go ahead and toss my eggs in there. Look at that. Put the bowl of eggs in there. Absolute goodness, if you ask me. And it's cooking right here. Look at the eggs. Look at the green onion. I'm just going to go ahead and pull it back like this a little bit. Look at that. Beauty. You could add some cheese in here for you cheese heads out there. Put some cheese in there. And what I do with my eggs, I usually take a spatula and then I just push the sides like this. Alright, for scrambled eggs. And allow the juice, egg juice, to drip down there and complete its fritation. Absolute goodness. Look at that. I'm taking the eggs. Try using a spatula or a spoon when cooking your eggs and you'll see how well they scramblize. Look at that. Almost done. Don't want my eggs to be overcooked. Don't want them to be undercooked. Alright, so I'm going to take this, scramblize the eggs. Like that. Now look at that. Almost to perfection right here. Just a little bit of the egg juice needs to be fried. And then I'm going to add this right next door to my steak for an absolute goodness meal, if you ask me. Alright, so the eggs are about done. I think there's enough heat in the pan for me to actually turn off the pan and just allow the heat to keep on fritating. I'll try a piece of this egg right here at home. Absolute goodness. So I'm going to take the egg, scramblized eggs, and put them onto the plate. I'm going to show you in a second what I did here. Look at that. Look at the steak. Look at the eggs. Look at the green onion. Look at the pepper flakes. Look at the garlic. Look at the juice right there. Absolute goodness, if you ask me. Absolute goodness.